My therapist says sharing can be therapeutic, and maybe someone going through something similar will find this helpful. So, here goes. My 10-year marriage ended in the most devastating and ultimately liberating way possible. And looking back now, I can honestly say it was the best thing that could have happened to me and my son, even though it nearly destroyed me at the time. I didn't see it coming. Not really. Or maybe I did, in pieces I refused to connect. That night, everything shattered in a way that felt both sudden and long overdue. My husband sat across from me at the dining table we had picked together years ago, fingers laced like he was about to present a business proposal instead of dismantle a family. The light above us cast a soft yellow glow, warm and familiar, the same light that had witnessed birthdays, quiet dinners, and late-night conversations about dreams we thought we shared. And then he said it. He told me he thought our marriage had become predictable, that the spark was gone, that he needed something more to feel alive. I remember blinking slowly, like my brain needed extra time to translate the words into something real. But what came next was worse. He suggested we open our marriage, just like that. Calm, measured, as if he had rehearsed it. As if asking permission to betray me was somehow respectful. Upstairs, my 8-year-old son was asleep, completely unaware that his father was proposing to tear apart everything we had built together. I felt something inside my chest collapse inward. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a structure that had been weakening for years, finally giving in. And then he said her name. A woman from work. A woman who had already been orbiting our lives long before I realized I was being replaced. That was the moment everything became clear. This wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't confusion. It was a confession. And as I sat there, staring at the man I had loved for over a decade, I realized something that terrified me more than anything else. I wasn't just losing my marriage. I had already lost it, long before he found the courage to say it out loud. My name is Emily Carter. I was 34 years old when my marriage ended. At that time, if you had asked anyone to describe me, they would have said I was steady, reliable, the kind of woman people trusted without hesitation. I worked as an IT consultant, earning a comfortable living. Not glamorous, not flashy, but stable. I liked structure. I liked knowing what my days looked like before they happened. Every Saturday morning, I coached my son Tyler's soccer team. I never missed a school event, not one. I built my life around consistency, around showing up, around being someone my child could depend on. And for a long time, I believed I had built something solid with my husband, Daniel Carter. We met in college. He was everything I wasn't. Outgoing, charismatic, the center of attention in every room he walked into. He studied communications, always talking about big dreams, corporate success, leadership roles, a life that looked exciting from the outside. I was the quieter one, engineering major, more comfortable with systems than people. But I fell for him hard. There was something magnetic about his confidence, the way he made everything feel bigger, brighter, more alive. We got married at 23. We were broke, stressed, figuring things out. But we were happy. Or at least I believed we were. 6 years into our marriage, Tyler was born. And for a while, everything felt perfect. I still remember the hospital room, the way Daniel held Tyler for the first time, his voice soft in a way I had never heard before. "We did good," he whispered to me, smiling. I believed him. I believed we were building something that would last forever. But somewhere around year 8, things started to shift. Not all at once, just small things, the kind you can explain away if you try hard enough. Daniel started spending more time on his phone, scrolling endlessly through social media, influencers, luxury lifestyles, people living lives that looked different from ours. He would sigh sometimes, not loudly, just enough for me to notice. "This is it?" he once said casually one evening, glancing around our living room. I laughed it off at the time. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, just feels a little predictable." I told myself he was just tired, maybe bored, maybe going through something normal. So I tried. I planned date nights. I surprised him with small things, his favorite meals, little gifts, tickets to events I thought he'd enjoy. I leaned in harder. But no matter what I did, the distance between us kept growing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet. Like a slow drift you don't notice until you realize you're already too far apart to swim back easily. And then, about a year before everything fell apart, Sophia Bennett entered our lives. Daniel had just been promoted to senior marketing manager at his company. Sophia was the new regional director. From the very first week, I started hearing her name. Sophia has incredible vision. Sophia thinks I have real potential. Sophia suggested this strategy that the clients loved. At first, I was happy for him. I really was. He seemed energized again, excited in a way I hadn't seen in years. I thought maybe this was what he needed. A boss who saw his worth, someone who pushed him, someone who made him feel important. I didn't realize then that I had just welcomed the beginning of the end into my home through casual dinner conversations and passing comments. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. But at the time, I was still trying to save something that had already started slipping through my fingers. At first, it was subtle. So subtle that I almost felt guilty for even noticing. Daniel started working late. Not once in a while, not during busy seasons. Consistently. Around 6 p.m., I would get a message. Important meeting. Don't wait up. The first few times, I didn't question it. He had just been promoted. It made sense. I told myself this was temporary, that he was adjusting, that things would settle once he got comfortable in his new role. But the pattern didn't stop. It intensified. 3 nights a week turned into 4, sometimes 5. And when he came home, something felt off. It wasn't just the time. It was him. There was a scent, not his usual cologne. This one was sharper, expensive, feminine in a way that didn't belong to our house. I noticed it the first time when he walked past me into the kitchen. I froze for half a second. New cologne? I asked casually. He didn't even hesitate. Office environment, and people wear all kinds of stuff. It sticks. He smiled like it was nothing, like I was overthinking. So I nodded and told myself not to be that woman. The suspicious one, the insecure one. But then came the clothes. Daniel had never cared much about fashion before. Jeans, simple shirts, practical choices. Suddenly he was buying tailored suits, designer shirts, expensive shoes. Clothes that looked curated, intentional, like he was dressing for someone specific. New look, I teased one evening. He glanced at himself in the mirror, adjusting his collar. Part of the job, he said. Image matters now. Again, reasonable. Again, explainable. And yet something inside me didn't settle. The phone was what changed everything. Daniel had never been secretive before. In 10 years of marriage, his phone was just there, unlocked, unhidden, unimportant. Now, it was always in his hand, always angled away from me. If a message came through, he'd tilt the screen just slightly, enough that I couldn't see. He started taking it everywhere. Bathroom, shower counter, even to bed. Under his pillow. One night I woke up around 2 a.m. The room was dark, but I could see the faint glow of his screen under the covers. I stayed still, quiet. And then I heard it. A soft laugh. Low, intimate. Not the kind of laugh you have with coworkers. Not at 2 in the morning. The sound twisted something deep in my chest. The next morning I almost asked him. Almost. But I didn't. Because asking would make it real. And I wasn't ready for that yet. Instead, I did what I had been doing for months. I adjusted. I became more attentive. More careful. More accommodating. I told myself this was a phase, that marriages go through cycles, that if I just held things together long enough, we would find our way back. But there were moments, small, sharp moments, that kept cutting through that illusion. Like the time I walked into the living room unexpectedly and he ended a call too quickly. It's just work, he said immediately. Too quickly, too rehearsed. Or the way he smiled at his phone sometimes. Not broadly, not obviously, just a slight curve of his lips. Private, contained. Like he was sharing something with someone else. And then there was Tyler. One evening, as I was helping him with homework, he looked up at me and asked quietly, "Mom, why does Dad always seem busy now?" The question hit harder than anything else. Because children notice, even when you try to hide it. Even when you pretend everything is fine. I forced a smile. "He's just working hard, sweetheart." Tyler nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't fully believe it. Neither did I. That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not fully. Not enough to confront him. But enough to stop pretending that everything was normal. Enough to realize that whatever was happening, it wasn't just in my head. It was real. And it was getting closer to something I wouldn't be able to ignore much longer. It happened on a Tuesday night, late September. Unseasonably warm, the kind of lingering heat that makes the air feel heavy, like something is waiting to break. I had just finished reading Tyler his favorite dinosaur book. He was curled under his blanket, eyes half closed, still talking softly about an upcoming school trip to the Natural History Museum. "Mom, do you think they'll have a real T-Rex skeleton?" he asked, his voice fading. I smiled, brushing his hair back gently. "I think they will, and I think you're going to love it." He nodded, already drifting. I stayed for a moment longer, watching him breathe. That familiar wave of love hit me, deep, grounding, steady. Whatever else was uncertain in my life, he wasn't. Then I turned off the light and walked downstairs. Daniel was sitting at the dining table, the same table we had picked out together years ago. His hands were clasped in front of him. There was something strange about his expression. Nervous, but also almost excited. like someone about to reveal something they had been thinking about for a long time. My stomach tightened instantly. "We need to talk," he said. Those 4 words. Simple, but heavy. I sat across from him slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "Okay, what's going on?" I was ready. Ready to hear about stress, work pressure, maybe even dissatisfaction. Ready to suggest counseling, a vacation, anything. I was prepared to fight for us. But what came out of his mouth, my brain couldn't process it at first. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his tone measured, controlled. "About us, about where we are." I nodded slightly, my fingers tightening around each other under the table. "And I think we've fallen into a rut." The word landed softly, but it echoed. "The spark isn't there anymore," he continued, "and I don't want to wake up 10 years from now full of regret." My heart started beating faster. Not panic, not yet, just awareness. "I'm only 35, he said. "I don't want my life to feel limited." Limited. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the one I had built a life with. "What are you saying, Daniel?" I asked quietly. He took a breath, and then he said it. "I think we should consider opening up our marriage." The words didn't sound real. They hung in the air between us, detached from meaning. Open marriage. After 10 years. After a child. After everything. I felt like the room tilted slightly. Like my body was there, but something inside me had stepped back. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. Calm. Confident. As if he had rehearsed this. "I've done research," he said quickly. "A lot of couples are doing this now. It can actually strengthen relationships. Bring back excitement." Excitement! I almost laughed. But nothing came out. "This isn't about not loving you," he added. "It's just, I need more." More. I swallowed slowly. There was one question sitting in my chest. Heavy. Sharp. And I already knew the answer. But I needed to hear it. "Is there someone else?" I asked. He didn't hesitate, and that was what broke something inside me. "Yes." Just one word. Clean. Direct. Final. My fingers went numb. "Who?" I managed. He leaned back slightly. "Sophia." "Of course. She understands me," he continued. "She sees my potential. She makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in a long time." Each word felt like it was being pressed into my skin. "She suggested we explore it," he said. "Just once. See if there's something real there." Explore. Like this was a business opportunity. Like I was an obstacle to be negotiated. "I told her I wouldn't do anything without talking to you first," he added, as if that made it better. As if asking permission made betrayal respectful. "It would just be one time," he said quickly. "It doesn't have to mean anything serious, just physical, to get it out of my system." I stared at him, really stared, at the man I had loved for over a decade, the man I had trusted with everything. And in that moment, I saw him clearly. Not confused, not lost, not struggling. Calculated, prepared. He had already crossed the line. This conversation wasn't about honesty. It was about justification. My chest tightened so sharply it almost hurt to breathe. "You're asking me," I said slowly, my voice trembling, despite my effort to steady it, "to let you sleep with another woman." He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him finish. "No," I said quietly. The word surprised even me. Cold, firm, clear. He blinked. "You didn't even think this through, did you?" I continued, my voice gaining strength. "You just assumed I'd agree, that I'd compromise my dignity to keep you." "That's not fair," he said quickly. "I'm trying to be honest with you." "Honest?" I repeated, my lips pressing into a thin line. "You've already been talking to her about this. Planning it. Thinking about it." He didn't respond. Because he couldn't. "You made your choice the moment you entertained her," I said. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Final. Then I stood up slowly. "There is no open marriage," I said, looking directly at him. "There is only this." His expression shifted. Confusion. Then unease. "You can pack your things and leave," I continued calmly. "Or you can sit here and wait while I figure out what comes next." His eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected this. Not this version of me. But I was already walking away. Because in that moment, something inside me had finally stopped trying to hold everything together. And for the first time in a long time, I chose myself. That night felt endless. I lay in the guest room, staring up at the ceiling, the faint hum of the house pressing in around me like silence had weight. Every sound felt louder. The ticking clock, the distant creak of the floorboards, the soft, almost non-existent noise of Daniel moving in the next room. My husband. The word felt unfamiliar now, like it belonged to a version of my life that had already ended. I turned onto my side, pulling the blanket closer, but it didn't help. Nothing did, because my mind wouldn't stop. It kept replaying everything. Our wedding day. The way he had looked at me when I walked down the aisle. That quiet, certain smile. the promises we made, in sickness and in health, forsaking all others. Words that had meant something to me, words I had built my life around. And now, they felt like lines from a script he had already forgotten. I closed my eyes tightly, but the memories kept coming. Tyler being born, Daniel holding him, his voice soft, emotional. We did good. I had believed that moment defined us, that it anchored us, that nothing could undo something that real. I was wrong. At some point during the night, the shock started to shift. Not into anger, not yet, but into something colder. Clarity. A slow, steady realization that this hadn't just happened. This wasn't a sudden mistake. This was something that had been building for months, maybe longer. The late nights, the phone, the distance, the way he had already formed an emotional connection with Sophia before even speaking to me. I hadn't lost him that night. I had lost him gradually, quietly, piece by piece, and I hadn't wanted to see it. That realization hurt more than anything else, because it forced me to ask the question I had been avoiding. What did I ignore? What did I excuse? What signs did I choose not to understand because I was too busy trying to hold everything together? Sometime around dawn, I stopped crying. Not because it didn't hurt, but because something inside me had settled. I sat up slowly, the early morning light filtering faintly through the curtains, and I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to compete. And I wasn't going to negotiate for my place in my own marriage. Later that morning, I called my sister, Melissa. She answered on the second ring. Hey, Em. I think my marriage is over, I said. There was a pause. Then her voice changed instantly. What happened? I told her everything. Every word Daniel had said. Every detail I could remember. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the phone tightly as I spoke. By the time I finished, Melissa was furious. Are you kidding me? She snapped. He asked you for permission to cheat? Yes. And he thought that was acceptable? I think he convinced himself it was. She let out a sharp breath. I never liked him, she said bluntly. He always cared too much about how things looked, about status, about appearances. I didn't argue, because for the first time, I was starting to see it too. You need to get out of this, she continued. Immediately. That's not confusion, Emily. That's disrespect. I closed my eyes briefly. I know. And Tyler? I'm protecting him, I said quickly. He doesn't know anything. There was a pause. Then her voice softened slightly. I'll help however you need. School pickups, weekends, anything. Thank you, I whispered. After I hung up, I sat there for a moment, alone, but not entirely. Then I made the second call. Ryan Mitchell, my college friend, now a divorce attorney. He picked up quickly. Emily, everything okay? No, I said simply. I need advice. I walked him through the situation. Not emotionally, just facts. When I finished, there was a brief silence on the line. Then his tone shifted. Professional. Focused. You need to start documenting everything, he said, immediately. Everything? Everything, he repeated. Messages, financial records, his schedule, anything that shows a pattern. My grip tightened slightly on the phone. Why? Because if this turns into a custody case, and it will, evidence matters, he said calmly. The more organized and factual you are, the stronger your position. I swallowed. I don't want this to become ugly. It already is, he replied gently. You just haven't acted yet. That hit harder than I expected. Do not confront him again right now, Ryan continued. Stay calm. Gather information. Move strategically. Strategically. The word felt foreign, but necessary. After the call ended, I sat there in silence again. But this time, it felt different. Not empty. Focused. Later that day, Daniel tried to talk to me. He stood in the doorway of the guest room, uncertain. Emily, we need to figure this out, he said. I looked up at him. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't see my partner. I saw someone who had already stepped outside of our marriage and was now asking me to accept it. There's nothing to figure out, I said calmly. That's not fair, he replied, frustration creeping into his voice. We should at least talk about options. I gave you one, I said. He hesitated. That's not a conversation, he said. No, I agreed quietly. It's a boundary. The silence between us stretched. Uncomfortable. Unfamiliar. And then he shook his head slightly, like he couldn't quite understand why I wasn't reacting the way he expected. That was when I realized something important. He thought I would fight for him. Beg. Compromise. He didn't understand that I had already stepped back. Not physically, but emotionally. And once that distance exists, there's no negotiation left. That night, as I checked on Tyler while he slept, I stood there a little longer than usual, watching him, breathing steadily, unaware, and I made a quiet promise to myself. Whatever came next, I would protect him, even if it meant dismantling everything I thought I had built. Because some things, once broken, aren't meant to be fixed. The days that followed didn't explode. They unraveled, slowly, quietly, but with a kind of tension that never left the room. Daniel moved his things into the guest room without asking, like we were already separated, like the decision had already been made. And in a way, it had. At first, he tried to maintain some version of normal, casual conversations, polite interactions, but there was something underneath it now, a distance that no longer pretended to hide. And then, he stopped pretending entirely. He started taking calls in front of me, not even stepping into another room, just sitting on the couch, speaking in that same low tone I had heard in the middle of the night. Soft, intimate, private. One evening, I was in the kitchen, washing dishes. Tyler was upstairs doing homework. Daniel was in the living room, and I heard him laugh. That same quiet, familiar laugh. Then, yeah, I miss you too. My hand froze under the running water. I didn't turn around. I didn't react. I just stood there, staring at the sink, letting the moment settle into something real. He wasn't hiding it anymore. He didn't need to, because in his mind, this was already over. Later that night, he walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. "We're going out Friday," he said casually. I looked up slowly. "We?" He didn't hesitate. "Me and Sophia." The words landed flat. No apology. No hesitation. Just fact. "She invited me to her place this weekend," he added. "I'm probably going to stay there." Probably. Like this was a scheduling detail, not a betrayal unfolding in real time. I nodded once. Okay. That was all I said. And for a split second, something in his expression shifted. Confusion. Maybe even disappointment. Like my calm reaction wasn't what he expected. But I wasn't calm. Not really. I was controlled. Because reacting wouldn't change anything. And I had already decided I wasn't going to play the role he had written for me. Meanwhile, Tyler started asking more questions. Small ones. Careful ones. Why doesn't Dad eat dinner with us anymore? Why do you sleep in different rooms? Did you and Dad have a fight? Each question felt like a crack, spreading through something fragile. I would kneel in front of him, keeping my voice soft. "We're just figuring some things out, sweetheart." He would nod. But his eyes, they didn't match his understanding. Children don't always know the details, but they feel the shift, the tension, the absence. That was the part that broke me the most. Not Daniel, not even the betrayal. Tyler watching something fall apart without knowing why. That's what hurt. Melissa stepped in more during that time, picking Tyler up from school, taking him out for ice cream, letting him stay over with his cousins, creating small pockets of normal life around him. I don't think I could have held everything together without her. But while all of this was happening on the surface, I was doing something else quietly, systematically, exactly the way Ryan told me to. I started going through our finances. At first, I told myself I was just being thorough, careful, but what I found made my stomach drop. There were charges I didn't recognize, high-end boutiques, restaurants we had never been to together, hotel bookings, expensive ones. At first, I thought maybe they were work-related, but the timing didn't match. Late evenings, weekends, dates that aligned too closely with the nights he had meetings. I sat at the dining table one afternoon, scrolling through the statements, my fingers trembling slightly. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was calculated. He wasn't just stepping outside our marriage. He was using our shared life to fund it. Money meant for bills, for Tyler, for our future. I took screenshots, saved everything, every receipt, every charge. Then I started looking around the house. Not impulsively, not emotionally, carefully, like I was collecting pieces of a truth I had been avoiding. One afternoon, when Daniel was at work and Tyler was at school, I opened his closet. At first, nothing seemed out of place, until I checked the back. Hidden behind a row of jackets, there was a small box. I pulled it out slowly. My hands felt cold. Inside was a necklace. Diamond. Elegant. Expensive. Not something I had ever seen before. Not something he had ever given me. There was a receipt inside the box, dated 2 months ago. Purchased by Daniel. For someone else. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the reality to settle completely. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This wasn't confusion. This was a full relationship. Developed. Maintained. Hidden. And now openly replacing me. I took a photo of everything. Put the box back exactly where I found it. Closed the closet. And stood there in silence. Not crying. Not shaking. Just still. Because something inside me had shifted again. The pain was still there. But it was changing shape. Becoming sharper. Clearer. More focused. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was about truth. And consequences. That night, Daniel came home late again. He walked in, loosened his tie, glanced at me briefly. "We need to figure out logistics soon," he said. "This situation isn't sustainable." Logistics. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was so detached. So removed from what he had actually done. I looked at him steadily. "I agree," I said. He nodded, relieved. Like we were finally on the same page. He had no idea. I was already several steps ahead. And for the first time since that Tuesday night, I didn't feel like I was losing control. I felt like I was taking it back. Quietly, carefully, completely. There's a moment in situations like this when everything goes quiet. Not peaceful, not calm, just empty. Like all the noise, all the emotion, all the questions have burned through you. And there's nothing left but silence. That's where I found myself. A few weeks in, after the evidence, after the late nights stopped meaning anything, after Daniel stopped pretending completely. He barely came home anymore. And when he did, it felt like he was just passing through. Like this house, our house, was no longer his. One night, Tyler fell asleep on the couch. He had been waiting for his father, holding on to that small, stubborn hope that things would go back to normal. I stood there for a long time, looking at him, his small hand still curled loosely around the edge of a blanket. His face soft, peaceful, trusting. I carried him upstairs gently, careful not to wake him, tucked him in, pulled the blanket up to his shoulders. And as I stood there, something inside me broke in a way it hadn't before. Not because of Daniel, but because of what this was doing to my son, to his sense of safety, to his understanding of what a family was supposed to be. I sat down on the edge of Tyler's bed and covered my mouth with my hand to keep from making a sound. Tears slipped out anyway. Quiet. Controlled. Like everything else. Because even now, I didn't want him to hear me fall apart. That was the lowest point. Not the betrayal. Not the confrontation. Not even the evidence. It was that moment. Realizing that no matter how carefully I handled this, something had already been damaged. And I couldn't protect him from all of it. Later that night, I sat alone in the living room. The house felt too big. Too quiet. Every corner held memories. The couch where we used to watch movies. The dining table where everything had changed. The kitchen where I had stood pretending not to hear his voice soften for someone else. I wrapped my arms around myself, staring at nothing. And for the first time, doubt crept in. Not about him, but about me. Was I too rigid? Too predictable? Had I made life feel small? The words he had used echoed in my mind. Boring. Routine. Limited. I hated that they still had power. That they could still reach inside me and make me question everything I thought I had done right. I replayed moments. The quiet nights. The routines. The stability I had built. Had that been enough? Or had I mistaken comfort for connection? The thoughts came fast. Sharp. Unforgiving. And for a brief moment, I almost understood how someone could start believing the story he told. That maybe this life wasn't enough. That maybe I wasn't enough. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. No, I whispered to myself, but the doubt lingered. Because heartbreak doesn't just break trust in others. It breaks trust in yourself. The next morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked tired. Not physically, something deeper. Like the version of me I had been for years was slowly fading. I placed both hands on the edge of the sink, staring at my own eyes. And I asked myself a question I had been avoiding. What are you holding on to? Because the truth was, there was nothing left to save. No marriage, no partnership, no mutual respect. Just history and habit and the fear of letting go of something that had once meant everything. That realization didn't feel empowering. It felt devastating. Because letting go meant accepting that everything I believed in had already ended. That the life I had built wasn't what I thought it was. That the man I loved was gone. Or maybe had never really been who I thought he was. That day, Daniel didn't come home at all. No message. No explanation. And for the first time, I didn't check my phone. I didn't wonder where he was. I didn't care. I sat with Tyler during dinner. Helped him with homework. Read to him before bed. Moved through the routine we had built. But something had changed. The pain was still there. But it had reached a point where it couldn't grow anymore. It had nowhere left to go. And when pain stops growing, it starts transforming. Slowly. Quietly. Into something else. That night, as I turned off Tyler's bedroom light, he looked up at me and asked softly, "Mom, are you sad?" The question caught me off guard. I paused, then sat down beside him. A little, I admitted. He thought for a moment, then reached out and took my hand. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm here." My chest tightened instantly. Because in that moment, my son was trying to comfort me, and something inside me shifted. Not broken, not defeated, but awakening. Because I realized something simple, something clear, something that cut through all the doubt. I wasn't alone, and more importantly, I wasn't the one who had failed this family. That night I didn't cry. For the first time in weeks, I just lay there, eyes open in the dark, and felt something new begin to take shape inside me. Not hope, not yet, but something close. Resolve. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came together in pieces. Facts, evidence, Conversations that finally aligned into something undeniable. By that point, I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was confirming what I already knew. But what I uncovered next changed everything. It started with a message, not from Daniel, from someone I didn't know. Her name was Sarah Collins. She had found me through a professional platform after I had quietly reached out to a few people connected to Daniel's company. Her message was simple. I think we need to talk about Sophia. I stared at it for a long time before responding. We met 2 days later at a small coffee shop across town. Neutral ground. Quiet. Safe. Sarah looked composed when she walked in. Professional. Put together. But there was something in her eyes. Something heavy. Like she had been carrying something for a long time. We exchanged a few polite words before sitting down. Then she got straight to the point. I used to work under Sophia, she said. My fingers tightened slightly around my cup. And? She held my gaze. And what you think is happening? It's not new. The words landed slowly, carefully. What do you mean? I asked. Sarah took a breath. She doesn't just get involved with people randomly, she continued. She chooses, strategically. A chill moved through me. She builds them up first, makes them feel seen, important, like they're being overlooked by everyone else. My mind flashed to Daniel's words. She sees my potential. She understands me. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And then? I asked quietly. Sarah's expression tightened. Then she blurs boundaries, she said. Late meetings, private conversations, personal attention disguised as mentorship. Every piece clicked into place. She did the same thing with someone on our team, Sarah continued. A guy named Mark. Promised him growth, influence, opportunities. And? I asked again. Sarah looked down briefly. When he didn't respond the way she wanted, things changed. My stomach dropped. She started undermining him, questioning his performance, excluding him from projects. A slow, sick realization spread through me. And eventually, I whispered, he left, she said simply. Silence settled between us. Heavy, meaningful. This isn't about connection, Sarah added. It's about control. The word echoed. Control. Everything I had been feeling, everything I had sensed but couldn't prove, now had shape, form, reality. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Sarah met my eyes directly. Because I didn't say anything last time, she said, and I regret it. There was no hesitation in her voice, just truth. And because your husband... She paused slightly, choosing her words carefully. He's not the first. I exhaled slowly, not surprised. Not anymore. Just certain. Before we left, Sarah handed me a folder. I kept everything, she said. Inside were emails, messages, documents, patterns, proof, not just of inappropriate behavior, but of manipulation. Systematic, intentional. I didn't open it right away. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would confirm. That afternoon, I sat in my car for a long time, hands resting on the steering wheel, engine off, just thinking. Not about revenge, not about anger, but about clarity. Because for the first time, I saw the situation exactly as it was. Daniel hadn't just drifted. He had been pulled, influenced, flattered, and then replaced. But that didn't excuse him. It didn't absolve him. Because at every step, he chose. He chose to listen. He chose to engage. He chose to cross the line. And now, I had everything I needed. Not just emotionally, but factually. That night, Daniel came home. Briefly. He walked in like he always did now. Detached. Uninvolved. I'll be out this weekend, he said, grabbing something from the kitchen counter. I know, I replied calmly. He paused slightly, then nodded, like we were discussing schedules, not the collapse of a marriage. As he turned to leave, I spoke again. Daniel? He stopped. Turned halfway. What? I looked at him, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel hurt. I'm done, I said. The words were quiet, but absolute. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means I'm not waiting, I continued. I'm not negotiating. And I'm not part of whatever this is anymore. He studied me for a moment, trying to read something. Emotion, weakness, anything. But there was nothing left for him to find. This doesn't have to be messy, he said finally. I almost smiled. It already is, I replied. And then I walked away. Not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. Because the moment I stopped hoping he would choose me was the moment I chose myself. And that changed everything. Things didn't explode. They collapsed, quietly at first. And then all at once. The following Monday morning, while Daniel was at work, I made the call. Ryan had everything prepared. Every document, every piece of evidence, every detail laid out with precision. Are you ready? He asked me. I stood by the window, looking out at the street, watching nothing in particular. Yes, I said. And just like that, it began. Daniel was served divorce papers at his office. Not privately, not quietly, publicly. In the middle of the floor, where everyone could see, Ryan had warned me what would happen. The shock, the attention, the way people would start asking questions. But I didn't do it for humiliation. I did it because I was done protecting someone who had shown me no respect. Later that afternoon, Daniel called. I didn't answer. He called again, and again. Finally, I picked up. "What is this?" His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the crack underneath. "You know exactly what it is," I replied calmly. "You're filing for full custody?" he snapped. "Emily, this is insane." "No," I said quietly. "What's insane is everything that led to this." There was a pause. "You're overreacting," he said. "We could have handled this like adults." "I am handling it like an adult," I replied, with clarity. "You're trying to take Tyler away from me," he said, his voice rising slightly. "I'm protecting him," I said, from instability, from confusion, from watching his father choose someone else over his family. Silence. Then, "This is because of Sophia," he said. "No," I corrected him softly. "This is because of you." He didn't respond, because there was nothing left to argue. Within days, everything started unraveling for him. At work first, the investigation. It didn't stay quiet. Not for long. Sarah wasn't the only one who had spoken. Others came forward. Patterns surfaced. Behavior that had been ignored suddenly couldn't be. Sophia was placed under review, then suspended, then removed officially. The company acted quickly, publicly, because situations like that don't stay contained once they start coming into the light. And Daniel? He wasn't untouchable anymore. He had tied himself too closely to her. His name came up. Questions were asked. Not just about the relationship, but about judgment, professional boundaries, decision-making. The same qualities that had once been praised now looked questionable. At home, things were different, quieter. He came back one evening, earlier than usual, standing in the doorway like he didn't know where he belonged anymore. "Can we talk?" he asked. I was in the kitchen, helping Tyler with homework. "Not now," I said calmly. Tyler looked between us, sensing something. Daniel hesitated, then nodded, and stepped back. That was the moment I knew. He felt it too. The shift, the distance, the finality. The custody process was exhausting, emotionally more than anything. But the facts were clear. His absence, the instability, the choices he had made, the documentation spoke for itself. The judge didn't need emotion, just truth, and the truth was enough. I was granted primary custody. Daniel received limited visitation, supervised, structured, controlled, not out of punishment, but out of necessity. When the decision was read, he didn't look at me. He just stared ahead, like something inside him had finally caught up to reality. After that, his life unraveled faster. He lost his position, not immediately, but gradually. Opportunities disappeared. Conversations changed. People distanced themselves. The same world he had been chasing no longer had space for him. Sophia was gone. Her influence, her presence, her promises, gone. And without that, there was nothing left to justify the choices he had made. No excitement, no more, just consequences. As for me, I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, like everything had finally settled into place. One evening, a few weeks later, Daniel came by to see Tyler. Supervised, quiet, awkward. Tyler ran to him, of course, because he's a child. Because love doesn't disappear just because reality changes. I stood back, watching, not interfering, not reacting, just observing. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt distance, clarity, understanding. This was no longer my story with him. It was just his, and mine was moving forward. Without him. It's been almost 2 years now, long enough for the chaos to settle, long enough for the silence to feel different, not empty, peaceful. Tyler and I built a new rhythm. Saturday mornings still belong to soccer. Evenings are slower now. Homework at the kitchen table. Quiet dinners. Bedtime stories that we never skip. There's a steadiness in our life again. Not the kind that ignores reality, but the kind that survives it. I started taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before. Running in the mornings. Reading again. Spending time with people who didn't make me question my worth. Melissa stayed close through everything. More than a sister. She became part of the foundation that held us up. And then, months later, I met someone, Ethan Brooks, a single father, calm, grounded, present. There was no intensity at the beginning, no overwhelming spark, just ease, respect, the kind of connection that doesn't need to prove itself. We started slowly, coffee, conversations, walks with the kids, no pressure, no expectations. And for the first time, I understood what healthy felt like. Not exciting in the way Daniel used to describe. Not dramatic, but real. Balanced. Safe. Tyler liked him. That mattered more than anything. Not immediately, but naturally, which is how I knew it was right. As for Daniel, his life looks very different now. Smaller. Quieter. He sees Tyler, under supervision, trying in his own way to rebuild something. I don't hate him. I don't even feel angry anymore, because anger requires energy, and I've chosen to spend mine elsewhere, on healing, on growth, on building something that isn't based on illusion. Sometimes I think back to that night, the dining table, the words, the moment everything broke, and I realize something now that I couldn't see then. That wasn't the moment my life fell apart. It was the moment it began to rebuild. Because I learned something I will never forget. You cannot control what someone else chooses. You cannot force loyalty. You cannot compete with someone who has already decided to leave. But you can choose how you respond. You can choose your dignity, your boundaries, your self-respect. I chose to walk away. I chose to protect my son. I chose not to shrink myself to fit into someone else's version of more. And those choices, they changed everything. Now I sit on the porch some evenings, watching Tyler play, listening to laughter that feels real. And I don't miss what I lost, because what I have now is honest, and that is worth everything.